Good morning from London News, Melbourne. Last night we had a chat with John in the UK in relation to the common law courts and its situation. And we had a New Zealand, as you'll see in a few minutes. We'll cross over there pretty quick. But the common law court is progressing and now in over 100 countries. And John explains exactly why there is a big delay getting stuff like answering emails, getting stuff sent back to Australia. A lot of people are complaining, whinging. Think about it, the world is on a BS shutdown, and it's hard to believe that the Democrats do not want Donald Trump back in office. And every state, Democrat-controlled state, has got this virus. He is not allowed to have his gatherings, and the whole thing is all down to stop the elections in November, stop people voting, so the crooked politicians like we had here with Malcolm Turnbull, we had a vote instead of a referendum, a postal vote. I mean, really, that's exactly what they want in America in November, to stop people voting. And they created a common cold and called it a lovely name, which has really had from 1800s and 1700s, right? One time called the sweating disease in the UK. So it's to keep the people from voting. Now, don't blame Daniel Andrews, don't blame anybody, because it's you, the people who are not awake, who are allowing it to happen. And then he's asking the poor old police force. The young ones don't care. They'll do exactly what they're told because they haven't been taught right from wrong, no laws. They just go out there and they'll tell the young coppers, we've got you covered. But they will throw them under a bus at the drop of a hat. They'll even pick the bus. The older coppers are sick to death of this. They don't like what they have to do, but they got a job to do. $200 fine for not wearing a mask. Don't worry about it. It's not lawful. You can't make a rule today and make it a law tomorrow. You have to go through Parliament. It has to be read 3 times. It has to be ratified. There are no laws to cover this. You have the human rights, right? We have rights. You can't override them. So just relax. Don't abuse the police. Pop the little fine if you get it. But the good part about it is it's not lawful and it's not enforceable. Anyway, I'm not going to get involved in that politics. It's very naughty stuff. Anyway, have a look at our meeting last night. Make your own decision and do get the message that John is doing his best in the UK to get stuff back to us here in Australia and in New Zealand and a lot of other countries as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. London sign off. Please subscribe and keep sharing. Bye for now. Thanks. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're now here in Australia, London News, and we're talking to internationals from New Zealand, New South Wales, and of course Victoria, and we have John live in Scotland. And of course, John represents the people, as we are trying to do here ourselves. So over to you, John. And the question we've all been asking is, why are we waiting so long for paperwork? We do understand it, but most of us do understand, but a lot of people just don't want to bother trying to understand. Can you explain what's actually happening and what the remedy and what you're actually doing about it? Thanks, John. Over to you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, hello, everyone. Welcome to everyone, both in Australia and New Zealand. What we're doing just now is obviously batting down the hatches. We're trying to get a lot more people involved with the process. We are hoping to move into premises given the demand for what we're doing. We're moving into premises within the next week to 10 days. The deal's signed off just now, and we have staff, obviously additional staff coming in to help out. Now, given the demand for the facilities just now in the countries that we're dealing with internationally, we're sitting currently with about 3,800 emails. Now, this is not junk emails, it's emails that need to be answered. Unfortunately, we've limited facilities just now until we get into the premises, and we're also aware that we've numerous orders that we're having to work our way through. Now, unfortunately, some of the orders we're having difficulties with because when they're putting in a shipping address to ship them to, we've already had some of them return. In fact, there was one came in from Australia on Friday. We'll be contacting the individual regarding they've put a wrong shipping address and it's came back saying the address was incorrect. And unfortunately caused problems here, and we have to chase them up. Also says when people are ordering, sometimes the information is incorrect, which means that we're unable to process it. We're asking people to work with us just now, but everything should be up to date in the next 3 or 4 weeks. There is a notice on the site just now, obviously pointing out that we are obviously running with a backlog just now. And again, the website is currently being updated, so you'll have a new website in a matter of weeks. It's currently being worked on just now, and the web developer is working on this daily. So if you bear with us, we will have the facilities just now, which will make it far easier for everyone to use in the future, and it will give you a far enhanced facility for the website. But as I said, we can ask people to bear with us just now. If obviously there's any problems just now, and obviously some of those keen and waiting, we're quite happy to accommodate them regarding what they want, whether they want obviously to cancel the order or we'll deal with that. We're also currently working on various issues through the courts in the UK just now, which will have an international bearing. So this information will be up in the coming weeks, because in the premises that we're looking to get, we will have a media room as well, which means we'll put out far more bulletins and information for people, but you'll find that this will be useful in each country to establish a position as living men and women. As I said, we are actually dealing with that just now. There will be paperwork to come out to support your stance and to help within their so-called courts and place of business. So if you just bear that in mind, and over the next week or so, we will be putting out information. I apologise for the delay just now, but unfortunately, since we are just about to click in and we've got many more staff on board, there are technical issues with emails and that just now, obviously, which are being unanswered and obviously being upgraded. If you just stick with us, it should be sorted out in the coming weeks. Okay.
Fantastic. Anybody got any questions for John? And let's go for it.
Is the paperwork, John, coming back to me directly?
Yes,
the amended paperwork.
Yeah, well, the paperwork that was sent through, it says obviously, it says I'll get back to yourself regarding that. The paperwork I've looked at now, it says you've actually done quite a good job, because obviously the paperwork we use is skeleton paperwork. Having looked at that and given the paperwork over for yourself and your colleagues to look at, they've actually done quite a good job, because obviously the paperwork is exactly suitable for what you need for convening the courts, and maybe one or two slight tweaks to it, but it's acceptable. So therefore, as we've actually got the first part done and dusted, that'll come back.
I'll replace, John, what I've sent to you. Then I'll replace it with the correct copy. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Thank you.
We've got it's just basic information just now to have a look through, just to assist you with it. But as I said, you've done everything it's required, so there's no issues at all with the paperwork. So congratulations, you've done well, because you've actually set up the first part. Now you have a number of cases just now which we've looked at as well, which is quite good. I think it'll be good for the people as well, and you're literally not that far away. So when you actually convene your court, apart from obviously the court hearing on the day, which you're obviously up to date with, and we'll give you more information, you should be able to convene your court. It's been done lawfully, and you'll get the verdict, which you'll be able to enforce afterwards. So
yeah,
that's fine.
Anne is going to doing the paperwork for New South Wales. So we're keeping it in one place and making it easier. So if you can communicate with Anne in relation to the paperwork, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
We've got some great women down here. Jackie is missing tonight. She's a great fast typist as well. Anyway, anybody got any more questions for John? Look, we're doing really well. Look, we're getting there, and we just got one day at a time. We're just waiting for that paperwork to come back.
Yeah.
Then we'll give these guys an invitation to a mediation. We'll video of that, and then the next process obviously is court.
Hey, hi, John. Just wanted to know, are you sending us videos for the training for what happens on the day and the process and the procedures and who actually picks the jury? I mean, when do we actually get all of that training?
What actually happens is, on the day in question, there'll be an introduction to the common law co-op. Many people have signed up to the common law co-op in Australia just now, and even New Zealand. But anyone else using this process, they have to understand what happens on the day. So when they attend on the day in question, there'll be an introductory video, about 15, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. And what that will do, we'll go through everything in relation to the day. It will highlight why you're there, why you're allowed to be there, why you're allowed to do what you're doing. It'll explain the history. I will then go through the hearing on the day, explain the roles of the people that turn up, the court officers that are appointed, and the jury members. I will then cover basically what's expected from them. So it's a brief summary, which people can watch and attend. And then after the video, this is what will happen, is there'll be an adjudicator appointed. So basically people will accept an adjudicator who will then conduct the hearing and just make sure that everything's followed procedure-wise. The hearing will be dealt with on the day. The officers appointed, they'll be given specific training for the day, and obviously the jury members as well. So you will have your court hearing on the day. But as I said, the initial video has been done, and we'll forward that to you so you can use it yourself. But as I says, the common law court, remember, is the people. It's obviously says it's the people. You're convening the courts over there, and the people that turn up are the court. So basically, they're responsible for what's happening on the day. There's a procedure laid out which they'll explain, and obviously they'll understand. As I said, you've already completed the paperwork for the individuals convening the first courts. Have already got the paperwork done and dusted because it's fine and it's okay the way it is. So other than serving that, it's just a matter of turning up on the day. But obviously the people will get plenty of training and advice, and obviously will continue working with yourselves and the individuals who are convening the cases, so you know exactly what you're doing. And as I says, hopefully at the end of the day you'll get results which give us a lawful verdict. Okay.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, John, just wanted to ask you a question. We've got just a quick question. We've had one of the politicians come out in New Zealand and say that basically he wants everybody vaccinated. And so we're wondering, a bit bizarre really. We're just wondering, has anyone done paperwork as regards anti-vax or anything like that?
Well, we've actually got, it says we dealt with, again, it says, which is, maybe it says the people watching will understand what we're dealing with. We've got quite a few people in the UK dealing with governments in various issues. Vaccinations is one, you've got 5G being another. We've got things like property theft, you've got obviously theft of children. In fact, we had a grandmother and her daughter were actually in prison this weekend, because I think the sister had a child who she's had for 5 months. There's not been an issue, but they've decided for whatever reason the social services were going to remove the child. Now, there's been no order issued and nothing had happened, but the mother had obviously went away with the child, and the next thing you knew that the individual was being threatened with kidnapping, and this says that she had taken the child away. There was an order issued which she never knew about. Still don't know what the order said, but they've actually taken the mother and the child, taken the mother from the child, imprisoned her, charging her with kidnapping, and the child's been removed. So obviously these things are disgusting, but the paperwork we're dealing with just now, which will be able to help everyone regarding the authorities you're dealing with. We had went in a case last week in London. We started off a simple thing. It was because of the lockdown in the UK. Now, they arrested an individual in Hyde Park in London, and he was appealing before the Magistrates Court in London. So we went to assist. Now, the argument being is the Magistrates Court, Westminster Magistrates Court, is actually a registered company. It's not a court. It's there for profit and profit only. It's a place of business. So what we did is we prepared the common law argument, and we put in about 14 or 15 points. Now, they cannot answer any of the points because it confirms that they would lose. So we had actually appealed. Now, on the day in question, we were first on the list. Now, we put that in. They weren't happy about it. They spoke this when we first appealed and asked us to complete additional paperwork, which we refused to do. And at the end of the day, we were kept till last on the day. We never actually got sorted with 20+6 at the end of the day. They actually extended hours to deal with more cases. But the magistrates who were supposed to deal with the case didn't have the ability to deal with this, didn't know what to do, had to seek advice, and they passed up to a judge. The judge didn't want to speak to us. He wasn't happy, and all he did was adjourn it for 2 months. So we've got to go back. But the point I'm making just now is part of the points, one of the points we made reference to is the fact that the court itself was a registered company. Now, as a living man who was standing and claimed ownership of his fiction, he says he pointed out that the court wasn't a court, it wasn't a valid court, it was a company. It was registered. So the point we made is that we require a ruling from the court before they commence confirming that the paperwork we had submitted, a company report, was genuine. And it gives the company information, the registration number for the company, and we required a ruling before they proceeded. Now, we have stated that this was the case. However, if the courts had not accepted the position that they were a company, we then requires them to obviously give us the relevant information, because basically it says we want an arrest warrant for the two companies. Now, one was done in Bradstreet, another one in the UK is called Company Check. both of these companies had given information on the court on the position as a company and a reference number. If the court didn't accept that and state they weren't a registered company, we wanted an arrest warrant issued for the CEOs of these companies on the crimes of uttering and producing false and fraudulent paperwork, which is affecting the people. So therefore, they've either got to arrest the CEO of these companies or confirm that they're a registered company. Now, when they confirm they're a registered company, which is where your vaccinations come from and the things like 5G, when they do that, they cannot actually deal with you unless it's a contractual agreement, because they're dealing with the fiction, and the fiction and their rules and the companies is a contractual agreement. So therefore, once you get them to confirm that they're a company, it could be anyone. It could be the 5G, you're speaking with vaccinations, it could be the authority, the local health authority will be a registered company, or they'll be connected to the national health authorities. Obviously, so if you can get the company's information regarding that, you've then established a contract. Now, for them to proceed with vaccinations, it has to be a lawful contract, and there has to be full disclosure and consent. If you don't consent, they can't proceed. So they're not allowed to, and that's their own rules. They can't do it. And again, for this full disclosure, they would have to imply that, or have to confirm that they're dealing with a legal entity, a fiction. Now, if they do that, you have ownership of the fiction, which means you can stop it. Because if you own the fiction, you don't consent, they can't proceed. So according to their laws and what they are doing, laws, they're not laws, they're rules, but according to what they have, they cannot proceed against you once you confirm that you're dealing with a company, because it's a contractual agreement and contract law applies, and without your consent they can't proceed. Now, this happens for vaccinations. It also happens for things like 5G and various other disputes with the court, because the courts are also corporations and they can't enforce any decisions on you once you confirm they're a company, because they have no authority over a living man or woman. They say nothing will ever give them parity with a living man or woman. So they serve the people, and obviously they're not proper courts. And once you establish that it's a contractual agreement, they can't proceed. You can ask them for full disclosure in the court. You can ask them for a copy of the contract, because they have to produce it. And without doing that, there's no contractual agreement.
We did find something else interesting about vaccinations too, and I've forgotten where we got the information, but there was 3 questions to ask your doctor, and he had to answer honestly, and under the oath that doctors have, if they answered yes to any one of those questions, then he was acting illegally, so he could be prosecuted on a personal basis. So there
you can also, I would need to look at the legislation, but there are, I think in the point you're making, I said there are 2 or 3 relevant points. If you ask these questions and they don't give obviously the correct answer, that then gives you the authority to turn around and say you're refusing to have it done. The other thing you do is obviously there is an agreement and paperwork been drafted whereby if you go in and someone threatens to vaccinate you, all you do, or a child or whatever, you take the paperwork, hand it to them and say you cannot do it unless you're prepared to sign the paperwork, which basically confirms that they are taking full responsibility and liability for any harm they cause to you. But obviously that I wouldn't be keen in using that, because obviously whether or not they sign it, once they inject you and anything happens to you, you can't then go back and say, I'm not going to sue you. Christ, it can end up killing you. I wouldn't do it. So I'd just say, no, we're not doing it. They have the only authority, well, they don't have authority. It's a contract. And providing, obviously, says they're allowed to do what they're doing, they'll just roughshod over you. If you establish that there is a contract and that they're a corporation and you confirm that you don't consent, they can't do anything to it. And their own rules state that's the case. But unfortunately, many people don't realise that that's what we're dealing with. But it is companies and it's contracts. And as long as you don't consent, they can't proceed.
You're covered by the human rights as well. I think it's Article 16. You don't.
I would. Yeah. The human rights are great. It says you've got the Universal Declaration as well. I tend to, it says from what we learned in this country, we tend to stay clear of Acts of Parliament or any legislation, because it relates to them, and it's like something. If you get into a gunfight, it says it's okay handing them a gun as long as they don't have any bullets in it. So it's fine. The point is, if you give them a gun and stick a bullet in it, your chances deteriorate. Now, by doing that, if you give them an Act of Parliament, they will argue. But the point is, Acts of Parliament are not applicable if you don't consent. You're a living man and a living woman. They don't apply to you. So don't give them ammunition. Just say, well, I'm not interested. Acts of Parliament don't apply. Statutes don't apply. We don't accept it. Under common law, it's basic harms. Cause no loss, harm or injury, and ensure you're honourable in your contracts. Yeah? Vicky?
John, to check that information regarding, proof that the courts are a corporation or a business, could over here we have the Official Information Act where we can go and ask those questions. Would you advise us to do that?
What you could do, it's an easy way to do it, is they may not give you may have to write back, but if you write them, just say require company information for obviously whoever it is you're dealing with. Just say, would like all information in relation to this company. Can you please forward it with a registered address and company number, and do that. It's probably easier. I don't know, in the UK we have something, it's a Data Protection Commissioner, but you write to them and I think they're given 28 days to respond. Normally when they respond, you don't get what you want, so you have to go back again. And the Data Protection Commissioner never takes any action against the authorities. So it's a waste of time. They won't want to give you the information that you're looking for. They'll try to disclose it. An easy way of doing it is just doing a company search on them quickly. You'll have a company search facility there in Australia and New Zealand, and you'll also have things like Dun & Bradstreet. Dun & Bradstreet are quite good. They give you their reference number for the company, and that's fine because basically that confirms that they are a company. And Dun & Bradstreet are the only ones that I'm aware of that give a company reference number for every company in the world. And the reason they do that is Dun & Bradstreet are set up to do a credit rating on every company in the world. So therefore, if they exist as a company, Dun & Bradstreet have done a credit rating and they have allocated a company number. So if you get this company number, it confirms that they are trading as a company, which is great.
You brought up a great point there. I think this goes in relation to any of these organisations, even the police. I think if you ask that question, obviously when you ask the question, it's a good idea to know the answer, but you ask them, are you a private registered company? And is this, if you have this, is this your ABN number? Well, they're going to have to answer it. And if they answer yes, well, then there's really, could be seen on reasonable grounds, there can be no further communication. Would that be pretty right, John?
Yeah. I went into court in Scotland when I first started to learn about this stuff, and I actually went in with, I went into an appeal hearing, and I'm aware that the court was a company, so I got a copy of the company record and the company information. So I went into the court and says, look, he says, first of all, I'm not happy, I'm not proceeding here, you have no authority and jurisdiction, which they ignored, and I says, on top of which you have no valid contract. And he says, well, what do you mean we don't need a contract? He says, we've got authority and jurisdiction, that's what you don't. I'm challenging it. And he says, well, you don't have, he says, we're informing you that we have authority and jurisdiction, we're going to proceed anyway. I said, well, you can't do that. And he says, first of all, this is a company. And he said, no, we're not. I said, yes, you are. And he said, no, we're not. I said, of course you are. Scottish Courts and Tribunal Service, you're a registered company. He says, no, we're not. I says, oh. I said, well, can you explain to me then why it says in this paper, you're a registered company? Show me that, he says. So no, I'm not accepting that. And he got and walked out. He wasn't happy. But the point is, what we do is if you get the company information, it's fine. Now, the information is great. So you've established that it's a contractual agreement. And without your consent, they can't proceed. So they can't adjudicate against you. Now, if they turn around and you give them the paperwork and they say, we're not accepting it, that means that the paperwork is fraudulent. Now, people actually use this for various reasons, and they'll make investments on this information because it's registered companies and credit reports and everything. So if someone is producing information which people are relying on to obviously make investments in obviously money and things like that and save their personal positions and their families to secure them, if they're passing out documentation and the court are refusing to accept it, in effect they're saying that it's not a valid document. That means that the company and the CEO, who's responsible or a director, they're responsible for passing fraudulent paperwork, purportedly coming from an official source, the company's house. Now, if that's the case, that's a crime of uttering. Now, the crime of uttering in the UK, I think there's a 7-year prison sentence for that, for the crime of uttering. It's falsifying documents and passing it on to gain benefit. So if the companies are producing these documents and the court are not prepared to accept them and they say they're not valid, you then ask for an arrest warrant immediately for the directors of the company because they're committing crimes against the people. So it can't be both. They're either committing crimes by issuing the paperwork, or the paperwork's legal and lawful. And if your paperwork's legal and lawful, it confirms they're a company, and it means that the courts can't proceed because there's no valid contract. And if they wanted to get into an argument, you can then ask for a copy of the contract so you can see it and full disclosure. Because in full disclosure, they would have to confirm that they're dealing with the fiction and not the living man or woman. Now, if you own the fiction through the common law court and you don't consent, they can't proceed. So you beat them either way. So this is what we're doing in the courts, and we put in here in this country, but they don't like it and they can't respond to it. So there was something I was watching, which we may use as well. So it was something, someone had told me something, excuse me. It was an interesting bit, because the courts, if you look at the situation just now, is the problem with the courts just now is they're actually structured to commit crimes against living men and women. Courts, statutory courts, so they call them, their place of business, what they'll do is they're setting up and operate a system to basically deprive living men and women of their position. Now, they're using criminal coercion to do that, and in doing so, any judge doing so will know that they're committing a crime against the people. This is by obviously using the legal fiction. So it is a criminal offence, and the courts know that. He says, so therefore, this is the fact that they do that, they should be held accountable for that as well. Now, it's other things we do as well. We're starting to put the paperwork, but the paperwork we've got with the common law court has been developed. They cannot challenge the paperwork. What we've said, we've had hundreds, I can't even count now, the amount of paperwork we have that's went into any authority you want, and it's never been challenged. I'm not just speaking about courts. We've went into courts right up to including our Supreme Courts. We've put them into presidents, we've put them into prime ministers, we've put them into politicians, we've put them into the police forces, solicitors, barristers, authorities, council authorities, local authorities, child authorities, driving companies like DVLA we have in the UK. We put them into banks, solicitors, mortgage companies, hospitals, anyone. Not one document has ever been challenged because they're lawful. So that's the thing to remember. Once you confirm your standing, this is with a declaration of your birth, and remember, it doesn't cost anything. You make the declaration for your birth, you confirm that you're a living man or woman. And when you do that, you have the right then to take ownership of the legal fiction attached to you, and then that closes them down. As soon as you do that, that's it. It doesn't cost anything. It can be done on the website, and that's you establish your position. They cannot then target you. And because of the arguments they have just now, we keep putting in paperwork, but they cannot challenge the paperwork. They're actually refusing to give us paperwork. In fact, I'll show you how wonderful a system we have in the UK. I was dealing with someone who they basically targeted, and they've actually put in prison. Now, I actually took paperwork, and I have the signed confirmation where the paperwork was served and signed for. They have paperwork which they got about 9 months ago, maybe 10 months ago. They've signed for and accepted the paperwork to go in, and this is at the High Court in London, and they've basically refused to deal with it. They've refused to deal with it. They don't say it exists. They refuse to talk about it. You can't get to speak to anyone. They've signed for it, so they have it in their possession, and in their system it's officially served, and because they can't deal with it, they just throw it to the side. They've ignored it. It's either, well, it says that has happened, and even to try and turn around and have a defence and say, well, I'm sorry, he says, we don't have it just now, we've come across it, we've found it. It just shows you how incompetent they are, because basically we're dealing with someone's life who's in prison. It could actually kill her. She's struggling just now with her health. They've put her in a prison, extradited her to another country, and yet because of their incompetence, they haven't dealt with the case. Or, I don't believe it is incompetence, because they sign for it, they'll have a procedure, and they boast on how efficient they are. They have the paperwork, but because they're going to lose, they just refuse to deal with it. So it's confirming we don't have justice. It's for money only and profit.
Stephanie wants to go, actually. Stephanie, you got to go. She's just come up from work. You want to say something before you go, Steph?
Yeah, sorry, I just need to leave and have some dinner, actually. Yep. But thanks very much, John. It's been really informative, and hopefully we catch up very soon.
I'll give you a phone tomorrow during the day, and we'll sort out the paperwork. Okay?
That's great. All right. And thanks very much, Anne. All right.
No problem.
See you, Steph.
Okay, cheers.
Excellent.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, who's next?
Just a quick question, John. I remember talking to you at some stage, and you were saying that I think it was 6 or 7 judges that you have taken to task in the UK, and so their job opportunities because of the prosecution, as it were, and the conviction, have they been limited in some way? Has it had some effect on them? Just interested to know.
I think the only thing we can do just now is say we have prosecuted 7 judges. There's 3 judges in Scotland. No, sorry. There's 4 judges in Scotland, there's 2 judges in England, and there's a judge in France. So we've obviously done that. Now, the feedback from all the judges is that they're not happy about it, they don't like it. And 3 of the judges even tried to drag us into court to charge us, which they couldn't do, so they had to drop the charges. They're not happy about that. We had one of the judges in England who had 8 years to go, but because of the amount of stick he got from us and the fact that we confirmed that he was a criminal, a convicted criminal, he took early retirement 8 years early just to get out of it. He was getting that much stick from the court. We do know that the French judge has been given the paperwork and he's not happy about it, and we've had feedback that obviously they don't like what we're doing. So the judges are uncomfortable about it. We know that we've changed judges deliberately when we put in common law court papers. We've had a case recently, it was specially allocated to an individual who's a specialist in the subject matter. So they appointed a brand new judge. Within a week we put in the paperwork, and within the week of us putting in and this judge being appointed, they actually withdrew and put another judge straight away. So obviously this female was protected because of the subject matter, and they brought her in specifically to deal with it. But once we put in the common law argument, she just got out of there immediately. So whether or not she wanted out or they deliberately moved her, they appointed her specifically to deal with something as an expert, but then they dropped it straight away and removed her. Now, as I said, when we went to court last week, we ended up in a magistrate's court within going in. It says the magistrates didn't know what to do. We were up first in the morning and we spoke to the clerk, and it became apparent they hadn't got a clue what they were doing. They wanted us to fill out additional paperwork, and we told them what we thought of that paperwork. They didn't like it, and they didn't like the fact that obviously we put in the paperwork and the questions we were asking. So they actually bottled it and they moved it up to a judge. So they made us wait all day, but the judge wasn't actually going to see us. He made us wait all day, and all he did is he just adjourned it for 2 months. Now, it should be dealt with straight away, but he's obviously knocked about a couple of months, which is ridiculous. So we're going to put some additional paperwork anyway and try and get this dropped before we even go back. He says, but if not, it's actually quite good because the individual concerned on the day, we made sure that as part of his defence, he was obviously getting to present his case and his paperwork, and he's obviously had it approved by the judge, and he's calling me as a witness. So I will get to appear on the day in question to obviously assist in matters before the court or the judge, whoever's appointed. So that's quite good, but we'll be able to cover that on the day in question, if it goes to court.
Another question: if they've been found guilty, under common law, and and a financial remedy is sought of some kind, is it possible to put a lien against their property or something like that that can be carried out within their own courts or handed to their own courts to carry out?
Well, I would say just now they don't. We've got liens just now. We have attached to some people just now, but it's difficult enforcing. And the problem with their existing system, and they won't actually allow this, because if it's not dealt with in their system, they won't accept it from a common law. What we're actually doing just now is there are some financial payments or awards against these individuals, which we put in, but we have paperwork we're submitting over the next few weeks that will go into the government as well. So these individuals will have to pay up. And the point we're making is the government will be they'll be required to enforce it. So they'll have to deal with it as well. Not only that, he says we're also looking, we've got an enforcement agency just now with the common law court, and we have numerous people wanting to sign up as well. So we can actually, we're going to action this in the near future, which means we will have enforcement constables with the common law court, which means that they can enforce the common law court orders. So we will get remedy. This is later on. But the point is, it's like, you've got to remember that the system they've actually developed for hundreds of years. You go back, even if you could go back further, but just take it back to Magna Carta in 1215. They've set up something there that they've developed for centuries. We've actually been going 3 years, and we've set this up, and the inroads we've made just now is huge. So the enforcement will come, and things, it's not that far away, and we're now setting up an enforcement team as well. So there is a lot going on just now, and as I said, just now in Australia and New Zealand, you're just starting to convene the courts. We've only been going 3 years, but you're about to do this. So get the courts, get the decision. The enforcement will follow shortly after, but you need the decisions and you need the courts up and running. And then when the people are comfortable with the system and they know how it works, you'll then use that. But with that becomes authority, or comes the authority of the people and the enforcement. So it will come. But it's a matter of getting it addressed, putting it in front of the jury, let the people decide. The authority comes from the people. The common law court is the people. So they decide, and basically they allocate. Basically you face a jury, your peers. The authority lies with them. They make up their mind, and basically it says if need be, it will be enforced later on.
And those judgments remain in perpetuity too, don't they, till they're carried out? They do.
Yeah. Okay, this is fantastic. Well, here in Victoria and New South Wales, we have the paperwork which is coming back from you, John, in the next few days, and we can start the first process of a mediation, and then down a little bit down the track, especially when the silly season is over, we can have a court. Anyway, John, I'd like to thank you for getting up early this morning, and New Zealand, of course, they're a bit further around the world and ahead of us in time. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for coming tonight. It's been really good, and I hope John has explained any delays, any problems you're having getting emails back. When you're getting 3,000 or 4,000 emails a week, and sometimes maybe in a day, it's pretty hard to send through them, especially when people have a habit of making them very, very long, and the point you need to get to is at the bottom. So if you're going to write to anybody, please keep your emails to about 2 lines, and there's a great possibility that you will get an answer, at least from me anyway. Anyway, John, thanks very much. Thanks New Zealand and New South Wales, and of course Victoria. London News sign off, and we'll all catch up again with the news. Thanks very much. Bye for now. That was informative. I hope you got something out of it. Take Bill Turner's advice. Get yourself an ID. Identification is very important, especially one that removes you from the fiction. I will add a little bit in here about how to do that. Anyway, again, London, thanking you very much for your support, and let's keep it going. Let's spread the word. A lot of people, you can't wake them up, so don't abuse them, right? People have to realize, and they do when they're in their 50s and 60s, that they've been had and brainwashed. Then they will come alive automatically. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Bye. You just simply send me a photo. I will put in the name, the given names. Your surname, which you will see is in brackets, like John Michael Doe in brackets. So I need your surname, your correct address, which is necessary for an ID, obviously. And then I will send this out to you by registered post, and the barcode obviously is here. It will be recorded on all your documents from then on. On the back of the ID, you will have this. I will print your name here in the correct, like John Michael. The surname is no longer there required. And this is all lawful under the Immigration Act. This can actually act as a substitute for a passport should you have lost it on the way into the airport or back into Australia. Now, the basic information is required, as you've just seen, right? Head and shoulders. If you have a family crest, by all means send it, but it's not necessary. And as I said before, I will send this out to you in a registered envelope with the barcode on it, registered mail. A copy will be sent to you, obviously, first for your approval. Make sure there's no errors. This is not a business. I am trying to recuperate monies I put into the machine, which was quite over $3,000. And if I would be grateful if you would send this as a donation